Welcome to the Modern Medicine Movement Podcast with Dr. Thomas Hemingway. Have you ever looked in the mirror and said to yourself, I thought I'd be healthier, in better shape, feel better both physically, mentally, emotionally, and spiritually, and be further along in my life? If so, come on this journey with my dad as he explores all things health and wellness from a holistic medical perspective, even as a classically trained physician. He'll share integrative strategies to optimize health and inspire you to join the modern medicine movement.
Welcome to the Modern Medicine Movement Podcast. Dr. Thomas Hemingway here, and I'm pumped. I'm grateful, excited to be back with you. For those of you guys who've been following me for a while know that I didn't get a podcast released last week because we had no internet access for an entire stinking week. I mean, it's nutty to think that in the year 2021, you can go an entire week without internet. Well, when you have satellite internet and you live up in the mountains and it's super rural and you have this freakish springtime weather where you're getting one day of single digit temperatures and the next day it could be 40 degrees and, you know, it just wreaked havoc on our satellite dish. We had a roof-a-lanche, an avalanche of snow that came crashing down and just destroyed our satellite dish, and it just took that long for them to get up here and replace it. And finally today we got our first day of internet after over a week, so super pumped to be back with you guys. Grateful to be here. I'm going to try to broadcast this one on YouTube as well, upload it now that I got internet, and just pumped to be with you. And I can't wait to share today's episode, something that I've been thinking about for a long time, and I think you guys are going to be pumped. It's going to be a little bit of a secret sauce to life, to living our best, our fullest, our healthiest, and we're going to get into that in a minute. But first of all, just wanted to thank you guys for listening, and I wanted to share a recent review I got because I just so appreciate each and every review that comes in. I read them all, and they just tickle my heart. They just really, really get me pumped. So review of the week from Apple Podcasts is by Minimalistic Mom Life, and she says, a complete 5 stars. And quote, Dr. Hemingway is a total rock star when it comes to explaining the implications of living a unhealthy lifestyle and what we can do practically every day to live better. I've listened to every episode and look forward to a new one each week. Thank you, Dr. Hemingway, for sharing your knowledge. Well, thank you, Minimalistic Mom Life, for that 5-star review. I so appreciate you. So appreciate all you guys listening. And please, 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 if you haven't already, drop me a review. Apple Podcasts, super easy to do. Scroll down to where you see the 5 stars. Click on the one farthest to the right, and then click on the little box below that with a little pencil coming out the top that says write a review. And just type me up a little something about what you're learning, what you're enjoying, what you're appreciating. And please subscribe and share. So anyway, wanted to do this show today on a topic that I've literally been thinking about for decades. And the reason I just decided to podcast on this was last week, well, it's been almost 2 weeks now, I attended a UPW event, and one of the days they talked about getting healthy. And I don't want to get too into what they talked about because I felt like it was a little bit outdated, some of the information there. And, I get you guys actually the more cutting edge, up-to-date stuff. But one of the questions that was asked was, what does it mean to be healthy? How would you define health? What does health mean to you? And, I had to think about that for just a second because, in medical school, I was always taught that health is the absence of disease, right? As long as you don't have any diseases, you don't have any medical problems, you don't take any medication, you're healthy, right? Not quite, not exactly. It's not quite that simple, and it's a lot more than that. To me, being healthy is way more than just the absence of disease. I'm coming up on 50 years old. I don't have any diseases. I don't take any prescription medication. In and of itself, that should qualify me as being perfectly healthy. Well, it's a good start, but it's not everything. I would describe health as having the vitality or the energy and the ability to do the things that you want and that you need to do. You know, in medicine, we talk about these ADLs. Some of you will appreciate that term, the activities of daily living. And when you're healthy, you can not only accomplish all of these activities of daily living, which, you know, can be super simple, right? Like feeding yourself, being able to use the restroom, you know, getting your groceries, making your food, you know, these kind of super simple things. But also, if you're truly healthy and vitalized and have the energy, you can do a bunch of other stuff too. You know, you can go for a run, you can go for a hike, you know, spur of the moment, you have a free hour and your teenager wants to go for a run, you can go do it even if you've gone for a run in the morning, you know, or whatever. You have the energy to do what you want and what you need to do to get through every day, but to not just survive, but truly to thrive. So that's how I would describe true health, is having that energy, having that vitality to be able to do what you want to do and to be able to be what you want to be and to not be held back by aches and pains and fatigue and brain fog and just not just feeling it, not feeling the flow, not feeling that desire to get crap done because you're so tired all the time, you know? So think about that for a minute, you know, especially if you're in your 30s or 40s or 50s or 60s or even 70s or even 80s. Heck, I'm going to be shooting for this goal of vitality and true optimal health till I hit the grave at 103 or whatever. You know, I want to be truly, truly vital and healthy the whole stinking time. And I believe that that's possible. So just think about that for a minute. Health is not just the absence of disease, but it's truly having the energy and the vitality to be able to do the crap you want to do and to be able to enjoy it, because life is about living, about enjoying, about having joy, not just surviving. So do you have all the energy that you want, all the energy that you need? Or do you sometimes make excuses that, you know, I'm in my 30s now, I just don't have the energy that I used to in my 20s, or I'm in my 40s, or I'm in my 50s, and I just don't have that energy. You know, if your so-called get up and go has got up and gone, something's not quite right. Even if you don't have any quote-unquote health problems or diseases or take any medications, something is not right. There is no reason you can't have all the energy you want and need. And I can help you in 3 simple steps to figure out how you can get this energy, this vitality to be able to live that life that you want to live, that vibrant, full life. Okay, are you pumped? Are you ready to go there? All right. Have any of you guys felt that way? Have any of you guys ever been tired or just gotten up and been like, I just don't think I have the energy to do all that stuff on my to-do list, or I just, you know, I'm supposed to do this thing with my kids and I just don't have the energy. I'm just not feeling it. Have you ever had that lack of energy, lack of stamina, lack of chutzpah, whatever you want to call it, to be able to chase after not only your daily goals, but your life's dreams, those things that you want to do? You know, if you've ever struggled with any of that, there's probably a reason behind it. And I think we can tackle it in 3 simple steps. And this is something that I've personally learned over the last 20, 30 years. And it hasn't always been the case with me that I've had all the energy that I wanted or that I was vitalized. And I can really appreciate you if you're struggling with that, if you feel like your energy is a little bit low and your mood might be a little low, or you just don't quite have that, you know, vitality, stamina, whatever you want to call it, to do all the crap that you want to do. I suffered for almost 2 decades from this sort of lack of vitality. And, you know, on the surface, you wouldn't know it. You know, if you had met me, you would think, he's a pretty active, energetic guy. He's doing a lot of stuff. I was working 80, 90 hours a week. I was also, going to my kids' soccer games. I was surfing almost every day. I was checking all the boxes, and I was a super busy dude doing a lot of stuff, but I rarely felt energized. I always felt like I was kind of dragging. Just ask my wife, I was also a little bit on the cranky side. I just wasn't full of that energy and vitality that I really, really wanted and desired. And I myself made excuses. I remember saying, wow, I'm 35, I'm 39, I'm 45, I'm 46, whatever it was. And I remember saying that to myself, well, it's just things are just not the same as they used to be when I was a teenager or when I was in my early 20s. And I just had to call myself on that BS. Because, guys, it's just BS. It's BS to say to yourself that, oh, I'm just getting older. I just, you're supposed to be more run down or have less energy or just, want to sit on the couch more as you age. Like, that's just crap. That's BS. And I say that with the most understanding and sympathy that I possibly can because I've been there. I suffered from this myself, that I'd get out of bed in the morning and I just didn't feel like I had it. I was doing it anyway. I made myself do it. I just sort of forced myself to get all the stuff on my to-do list done, all the work hours and the other things that I was doing with my family life and my kids, events and all that stuff. I was checking all the boxes, but I wasn't vitalized. I wasn't happy. I wasn't in full sort of optimized mode, if you will. And so, I can share that with you because I've been there. I was truly exhausted. I just felt drained each and every day. At the end of the day, my wife would tell you, I'd come home from work or whatever it was, I'd sit on the couch and I'd just be fried. And that'd be the time that I'd have with my kids. We'd sit around and we'd try to read, together and do our little family routine at night. And I'd be snappy and cranky. And that's because I wasn't fully vitalized. I wasn't full of the energy that I really needed and wanted. And the good news is there's a fix. It's not rocket science. You can get that vitality back. Doesn't matter your age. I don't care if you're 50 or 60 or 70 or heck, even 80. You can get that energy and vitality back. And there's 3 simple things that we'll talk about today that are going to get you there. The first one is get yourself metabolically healthy. And we'll talk about that a little bit, but I've podcasted a couple of times on metabolism, so I'm not going to get super deep. We're not going to do the deep dive. You can take a look at my previous podcast on metabolism. I'll refer you to that in the show notes, but I've done at least 2, maybe 3 podcasts already on metabolism. And I'll just kind of do a quick summary here, because one of the things that is so helpful is if we can get ourselves metabolically healthy, which unfortunately probably only about 10% of the population is metabolically healthy, this we can change. This is within our power. It's not overly complicated. It's really not. And the short answer to how we get metabolically healthy is, number 1, we got to feed ourselves the right fuel, right? Our metabolism is based in our cells, in this small organelle, it's called, the small little energy powerhouse there called the mitochondria. And we got to give that mitochondria the best possible fuel. And that primarily comes from healthy, natural, real, whole foods, right? Non-processed, non-refined, simple, natural, real, whole foods, both plant and animal, right? So we got to feed our body the best possible fuel. So important. Can't overstress this enough. And we're going to talk more about this in just a sec. The second item that we can do after really taking good care of our metabolism by feeding it the proper food and nutrients is we got to decrease our inflammation. This is something that I really don't feel like we talk about enough in modern medicine and just in health and wellness in general. And it is one of the biggest plagues of society, this concept of overwhelming inflammation. In fact, I dedicated an entire podcast on inflammation and called it something like the root of all disease, which is inflammation. And it was, I think, episode 38. So please take a listen to that if you haven't already. But basically, we can think of inflammation as sort of a chronic, smoldering fire, not just like a little fireplace, kind of small kind, fire, as we say in Hawaii, not small kind. This would be full on, like forest fire going on in our bodies when we have chronic inflammation, because chronic inflammation eats up our energy stores. It literally zaps our energy stores. It literally just consumes that ATP, that adenosine triphosphate, in a just amazingly, just crazy way. I mean, think about if you've ever gotten sick, say with a flu, bad cold, or even COVID this year. What happened? Did you feel super energized, pumped up, ready to crush the day? No, you were super just tired and fatigued and just felt zapped. And the reason you felt that way when you were sick is because you had lots of inflammation going on in your body. That inflammation, all those inflammatory reactions, the cytokines, the immune cells that are, literally on fire, consuming, all this energy, trying to fight off the illness or whatever it is, are basically just chewing up all the cellular ATP, or the energy unit that we have in our cells, and there's not much left over. And that's why you felt so stinking tired and you just wanted to stay in bed all day when you were sick, because that inflammation was literally consuming all of your energy. So that's what we would refer to as acute, or right now, inflammation, the acute phase. But many of us also tend to suffer from chronic inflammation. We have this sort of low-grade inflammation occurring all the time, and it's literally zapping our energy stores. Not only is it making us unhealthy and more, prone to getting sick, like if somebody, comes into our contact with, the flu or even COVID or anything like that, we're more prone to getting sick. But in sort of the day-to-day, even when we're not sick, we just don't have that much energy because it's being consumed by this forest fire, if you will, of inflammation. And it's one of those things that you may not have heard about because it's kind of a newer, topic that's been discussed in the, health and wellness arena just in the last decade, because we didn't know much about it before, or at least how it related to metabolism, how it related to the energy use in our bodies. And there's actually been some really interesting work on this. There was a study that I'll share with you in the show notes about comparing the energy requirements of basically a westernized person that has like a desk job, sits most of the day, to a hunter-gatherer in Tanzania of the Hadza tribe, who literally, they're out every day looking for food. They're hunting. They're gathering berries. I think the men on average, walk 15 to 20 miles a day. The women around 10 miles per day, looking for food. They're hunters and gatherers. They're super fit. They're super lean. They're literally walking, hiking, running all day long. And guess what? Their energy expenditure, what they call the TEE, the total daily energy expenditure for them, these Hadza, foragers in Tanzania, was basically identical to the energy expenditure of the Westerner who sat on a chair, sat on their butts at the office all day. But the difference was that basically these Westerners were full of inflammation. And although they had the same energy consumption, in the Westerner that sat on his or her butt all day in the office and wasn't getting out and doing stuff and was often eating crappy processed, refined carbs and, seed oils and junk foods, if you will, they were full of inflammation. And this inflammation was consuming a lot of energy, and they had nothing left in the tank, And so at the end of the day, they felt maybe like you and I did, where we just didn't have that get up and go. We just didn't have the energy. You get home from work and it's like the last thing you wanted to do was go for a run or go do something, physical, because you just felt devoid of energy. And the reason for that was this chronic inflammation that was largely caused by a super crappy Western diet, right? Sometimes it's referred to as the SAD diet here in America, right? The SAD diet, the standard American diet. It's literally the SAD diet. It sucks. It's basically composed of lots of carbohydrates, lots of processed foods, lots of seed oils, fried foods, just junk foods, things that aren't nutritionally dense, and they may be calorically, dense. They're giving us plenty of calories, but they just don't have the nutrients. So I'll give you a link to this study in the show notes. Super interesting. They use this technique called doubly labeled water, which has been used to study metabolism and energy requirements. Super interesting. They take sort of a quote unquote heavy water. They use what's called deuterium, which is a hydrogen that's heavier than the standard hydrogen, having a molecular weight of 2 rather than 1, and this heavier version of oxygen rather than 16. It has 18 is its atomic number, or the mass units there. And so it's easy to study the energy requirements with this method, the doubly labeled water. It's also a method used in PET scans. So it's super interesting for you science nerds out there. Super cool technique. And basically it's able to calculate the energy requirements that different people have. And in this case, these hunter-gatherer people had the same energy requirements as those that sat on their butts in the office in the US or Canada or wherever the Western folks were at the time of the study. And I mean, you got to read it to believe it. It was, when I first read it, I'm like, how could that even be possible? But basically, when you consider the inflammation that was occurring in the Westerners, and likely much of this was done to their, was due to their poor diet, it kind of makes sense, because it was that energy was fueling the inflammation. In the Hazda folks, they had basically no inflammation, so it was fueling their bodies, their metabolism, and allowing them to walk and hike 15, 20 miles per day with no problems at all. So super interesting, and really nowadays it's a real interesting problem that we have. Years ago, even worldwide, hunger and starvation was huge, right? If you look at now the major medical issues in the world, according to the WHO, starvation and hunger is way down on the list. And in fact, up at the top 10 things on the list that are causing problems in society, most of it is related to the opposite of hunger. It's actually overfeeding, right? It's obesity with too many calories, but yet nutrient depletion. In other words, we're eating tons and tons of calories, right, from the standard American diet, the SAD diet, if you will, but we're not getting the nutrients. And this may be actually part of why we crave, more and more food, because we just aren't getting the nutrients. We just aren't getting what we need. Super interesting concept. If we're not getting the nutrients that our body needs, we want to eat more and more. So we are overfed, but we are undernourished. Does that make sense? Overfed, but undernourished. That's sort of the curse of modern society, especially the Western societies, if you will. Our present day, first world curse, if you will, having, this overfeeding by non-nutritive foods, which leads to, of course, all those things we talked about: obesity, hypertension, diabetes, heart disease, cancer, lots of bowel disorders, IBS, IBD, dysbiosis, to name a few. So, think about this concept of metabolism, the overfeeding, inflammation, the inflammation basically sucking up all the energy that we could be using for things like hiking, biking, running, jogging, walking, exercising, whatever, things that we want to do. We could have the energy if we didn't have all this inflammation going on, right? And, you may ask yourself, well, do I even have inflammation going on? Well, there's a good chance that you may have some chronic inflammation. The studies show that 6, out of 10 people will have some ongoing chronic inflammation. And if you want to do a quick test, you can ask your doctor to run a highly sensitive CRP. That's a highly sensitive C-reactive protein, to check out to see if you got any inflammation going on in your body. But you can also ask yourself a couple of questions. Are you starting to have less energy than you used to have? Are you starting to sort of blame your increasing age of your 30s, 40s, 50s, 60s, whatever, and just sort of blaming that, like, I'm not supposed to have energy anymore. I feel achy. I feel tired. I have, less mental clarity, sort of this brain fog. I feel like my body's slowing down. I feel like I get swollen. I feel fatigue. I feel brain fog. I feel depressed, low energy, or just not tip top. And if you have any of these symptoms, you likely have some chronic inflammation going on. So you can check that with a highly sensitive CRP. And basically you want that number to be as low as possible. Less than 1 is best. And if you want to just take a deep dive, check out my podcast number 38 on inflammation, the root of all disease. And that will kind of get you a little bit more info on inflammation. But basically, it's super, super common. It's probably sucking up a lot of the energy that you would really love to be able to use for other things that you want, right? So one of the issues besides this sort of overfeeding, that we have in Western culture, we eat too many calories but not enough nutrition. And this wreaks havoc on our bowel, on our gut, on our GI system. And that's getting on to number 3. After we get metabolically healthy, decrease our inflammation, we got to get our gut healthy, get our microbiome healthy. And that will, in turn, help decrease our inflammation, as well as it will help us absorb more nutrients, because our gut flora is crucial to absorbing nutrients from what we eat, as well as actually making nutrients. Super, super, super interesting. Lots of vitamins that our GI flora can actually produce, everything from vitamin K, in fact, biotin. I just want to get this quote from you. Super, super interesting quote from one of my sort of colleagues and peers, Dr. Mark Hyman. I don't know if you guys have ever heard of him. Super brilliant guy. I think he's written about a dozen books or more. His most recent one called The Pegan Diet, super interesting. Pegan's kind of a spoof on, a paleo / vegan, a little combo of both plant and animal, the healthy stuff. He calls it the Pegan Diet. It's just kind of a fun word, but it's a new book he wrote. It's spot on. I'd recommend checking it out. But a quote that he has said many, many times over the years, which I find super, super interesting. He says, quote, "Even with a perfect diet, the combination of many things, including our depleted soils, the storage and transportation of our food, genetic alterations like GMO stuff of traditional heirloom species, and the increased stress and nutritional demands resulting from a toxic environment, make it impossible." I said it. Impossible for us to get the vitamins and minerals we need solely from the foods we eat. That was Dr. Mark Hyman, super smart guy. He's been doing this a lot longer than I have, many, many decades into the health and wellness space. And he also quotes an article from the Journal of the American Medical Association, or JAMA, by Fairfield and Fletcher, which is called Vitamins for Chronic Disease Prevention in Adult Scientific Review. That's from 2002. I'll throw that in the show notes as well. But basically, even with the perfect diet, you're still going to be nutrient deprived of some things. You're still going to need to supplement. So super, super interesting. And it's unfortunate because a lot of people don't know that. They just think, I'm going to try to eat real clean. I'm going to do all the things. I'm going to buy nothing but, organic, whole, real food. I'm going to try to get my meat well-sourced as well. Going to try to get, grass-fed, grass-finished, blah, blah, blah. All that is super important. But at the end of the day, it may not be enough. It just may not be enough because of our nutrient-depleted soils. Sorry, I don't know if you're hoping you guys can't hear that buzzing that I'm hearing. Some kind of weird feedback thing. But anyway, this has actually been known for many, many years. The fact that we have nutrient-depleted soils, it's been going on for almost a century. Literally 90 years already, we've known this, that our soils here, especially in the U.S., have been nutrient depleted because of poor farming techniques, this kind of monocrop stuff that we've done to ourselves. We just haven't used good farming techniques. We've used GMO, seeds. We've used pesticides, all these poor, nutritional agricultural techniques that, are profitable. They make the big food lots of money and we can feed lots of people, but it's nutrient depleted food that we're eating. So there's a super interesting report from the U.S. Senate. It's a report number 264 if you guys are history buffs. This actually came out in 1936, like almost 90 years ago, 1936. They basically brought this to the Senate's attention saying, hey, our soil is already depleted. This was based on Dr. Charles Northern's research on the mineral depletion of American soil. And he says, quote, he was basically talking about how we should fix this problem because he says, quote, it is simpler to cure sick soils than sick people. Which are we going to choose? Which shall we choose, he says. So even at that time, North America soils were estimated in 1936 to be hugely lacking in mineral content, and 99% of Americans back in 1936 were considered mineral and nutrient deficient. Like, holy crap, 1936. Dr. Northern says, and I quote again, healthy plants mean healthy people. We can't raise a strong race on a weak soil. Can you believe that? This was almost 100 years ago. This is amazing. This is cool stuff. If you guys are kind of history buffs and you're interested in this, Dr. Northern, I'll put a link to the full Senate report from 1936. It's just, I could actually just sit here and read it. It's super fascinating. And it's actually, for most of us, I think it will be new information. And sadly, although this came about, the fact that our soils, especially here in the U.S., since 1936 have been significantly nutrient depleted, but sadly, almost nothing has been done about it. Almost nothing. It's pretty sad. Super fascinating, interesting, but also really, really sad. So that's an issue. And I bring this up because getting our microbiome and our bodies healthy will often require some supplementation for this actual fact that we can't get it all from what we eat. Even if we eat the cleanest, best diet ever, we can't get it all. And so we're going to talk about that a little bit more, but the microbiome in and of itself is so important for our overall health. It's so important for decreasing our inflammation, as well as, like I mentioned, it can produce some of these important vitamins and minerals that we need. And so we got to get it healthy. And I'll share with you a couple of brief things here, but also I'll refer you back to a couple of the podcasts I did previous. I think it was like number 3 and number 4 on Get Your Gut Healthy, Change Your Gut, Change Your Life. Talked all about the so-called gut wreckers, things that mess up our gut, and those that can help our gut as well. Spent, I think, 2 hours talking about that. But the gut can really, really, really help us to both decrease inflammation because almost 70%, more than 2/3 of our immune cells are actually located in our gut. And they are presented with all kinds of things from our food. Some of it good, some of it bad, some of it toxic, but it's antigenic. In other words, it triggers an immune response. And the reason that this happens is there's basically a single cell layer, a lining in our gut. And if it's not healthy, you have these spaces between the cells called the gap junctions, which when our gut is not healthy, these sort of open up, and that's sort of what causes leaky gut. And you get more of this antigenic, or food particles and byproducts and toxins that are basically getting into your body through the gut, through these open spaces, the leaky gut or the gap junctions that open up. And they're presented to your immune cells, which are right there, and they cause tremendous amounts of inflammation. All these sort of bowel diseases you've heard of, inflammatory bowel, which is Crohn's, ulcerative colitis, also irritable bowel, dysbiosis, all these things have an element of inflammation. So in order to decrease our inflammation, we got to not only watch what we eat, but we got to take good care of our microbiome, our gut flora, which literally outnumber us, our human cells, by something like 10-1. So super, super important. I'll refer you back to my podcast 3 and 4 that talk specifically about that. But we got to keep our gut healthy. And the 3 primary ways, you've probably heard this simple explanation. We need to seed, feed, and weed our gut. So in other words, we need to seed it with good, healthy microbes that we actually need and want, the ones that are the good bacteria. And we can do that by taking probiotics or eating probiotic-rich food or both. And then we need to feed these gut bacteria the food that they will thrive on, which is usually the prebiotic fibrous stuff, all those nice, green, just real fibrous foods like asparagus, all the lettuces, kales, and things. And my personal favorite, you guys probably heard this ad nauseum, but it's not only the asparagus, but the Brussels sprouts. I just love them. They have tons of prebiotic fibers in there. So we need to feed the gut, the good stuff, and then we need to weed out the bad stuff. Okay, so seed, feed, and weed. That's sort of the approach that we can take to get our gut healthy. I'll refer you back to episodes 3 and 4. And I can tell you that supplementation is a key role here, not only with things like probiotics, but getting the appropriate nutrients that we are lacking, because almost all of us are missing out on some super helpful nutrients, things like magnesium, vitamin D, iron. These are some of the most common nutrient deficiencies in the world. I've dedicated several podcasts to each of these. And I personally, even though I eat super clean, super healthy, I personally supplement. And I want you guys to be able to maximize your gut health and your personal health, and supplementation may be part of that for you. And so I'd like to, just give back a little bit to my audience here. For any of you guys that aren't already supplementing, many of you may know the supplements that I personally take. If you haven't ever tried them, you don't know anything about them, you want to, try some of these supplements, I would be willing to give the first 5 people who message me either on my Modern Medicine Movement podcast at Gmail or Facebook, Thomas Hemingway at Aloha Surf Doc on Instagram. I'd be willing to give the first 5 people who message me that aren't already familiar with these supplements that I take, that aren't already taking them, a free product, just so you can, get on your way to optimal health. And that's going to be requiring some supplementation, like the words of Mark Hyman that I quoted earlier, the 1936 Senate report. Unfortunately, as hard as we try, eating as clean as we can, we're still going to be missing out. So I'm going to, offer that to the first 5 of you guys that contact me, and I'd be happy to do that. So reach out to me. I'd be happy to do that. So anyway, summarizing this episode today on getting vital, getting that energy, having that ability, vitality, just, capability to do all the stuff that we want and need to do is actually pretty simple. The 3 topics we talked about in this: getting our metabolism healthy, getting our gut healthy, and decreasing inflammation. So important. They're super simple. I'll just throw in one little pearl that I try to do many times a day. Whenever I'm feeling a little bit, energy zapped, and I just don't have the get up and go, and I want to have it because I want to get my crap done. I got 6 kids at home, lots to do, and I just get up, get out of my chair, and I do 2 to 3 minutes of some sort of exercise. I might just lift some weights real quick. I might walk in place. I might do some breathing. Just do a brief 2 to 3 minute interval every hour or so. Even if you've got a desk job, you can do this. You can stand up every hour and do a little bit of, 2 to 3 minute of some kind of exercise. You don't even need weights. You can walk in place. You can, do a squat. I mean, there's all kinds of stuff you can do, basically just standing at your office desk. I would also recommend, trying to get a standing desk if you can, or just stand up for a few minutes every hour. Do a little movement. My favorite vitamin M for movement. And I promise you that will help you get energized way more than reaching for that power bar or that, energy drink or whatever it is that you might reach for when you're feeling zapped of energy. If you just get up and do something, you will be surprised, shocked. I mean, it will blow your mind how quickly you will feel energized. And I think I forgot to mention this, but when you're doing your time-restricted eating or intermittent fasting, you will also notice your energy levels are going to go way up. And I know this sounds totally counterintuitive, right? And this is part of getting that metabolism healthy, and you can refer to my podcast on intermittent fasting. But what it does is that when you don't eat anything for 8 to 12 to 14 to 16 to 18 hours, you're basically in what's called the fat burn phase. you're burning fat for fuel as opposed to carbohydrates for fuel, which unfortunately many of us are burning most of the time because we're doing the standard grazing or snacking or whatever it is. We're not spacing out our meals that much. And, no judgment, but that's sort of what we've been taught by many, not only healthcare providers, but nutrition experts and, fitness experts. They tell us, oh, you got to eat every 2 to 3 hours. And that's just crap. So it's total crap as far as your metabolism goes. If you give your metabolism a break, not only will it help reduce inflammation because it can actually do the cellular detoxification and clean up, the autophagy, so to speak, that it needs to be done. It'll help you decrease inflammation, but it'll also energize you. So try the time-restricted eating or intermittent fasting. I did a whole podcast on that. You would be surprised how energized you can be while you're in that phase. What I do, I get up in the morning and I do my workout right away. I just like to do it first thing in the morning, whether it be get up and go surfing, go for a walk, a hike, a couple laps on the ski or snowboard hill, whatever it is. I try to do that first thing in the morning after getting up without eating anything. I'll drink a glass of water or what have you, but I don't eat any food until after I do my workout, because that way I can power my workout with fat, the fat burn, because fat has, approximately 9 kilocalories per gram, whereas, the protein and carbohydrates, which are usually fueling us, only have about 4. So it has half of the energy available. And also you can upregulate that fat in your bloodstream for the fuel if you're in a fat burn phase, which is going to take 8 to 10 or so hours of fasting to get to that phase, to the fat burn. And plus, bonus, if you want to lose a couple pounds or whatever, if you exercise fasted, you can drink all the water you want. You can, do the so-called water fast. It doesn't matter how much fluid you drink as long as you're not eating calories. The rule of thumb is during your fast, try to keep the calories less than 50. So if you got to have your cup of coffee in the morning, as long as you're not putting sugar and creamer and all that other stuff in there, it would meet that requirement. So anyway, just had to throw that out. Something that I've learned over the years. It's been so helpful to me to have added energy in a fasted state. It's amazing. I love that time of day. I usually don't eat my breakfast or lunch or brunch or whatever you want to call it till about noon or 1 o'clock in the afternoon. And then I, eat dinner 7 or so, done by 8. And so between 8, p.m. and about noon, that's about 16 hours. I don't eat anything. I drink plenty of water, and I might drink an electrolyte drink or what have you, but I don't drink, I don't eat any food. And I am so energized. I literally could run all day, off of the fat for fuel. So it's super awesome. Don't mean to belabor it. Check out my intermittent fasting episode, but just wanted you guys to hear that once again. I think it's so, so important. And at the end of the day, these are simple, simple things. None of them you have to keep a journal for. You don't have to calorie count. It's not rocket science. You get your metabolism healthy, decrease your inflammation, get your microbiome or your gut healthy, and you are going to be on the road to vitality and energy. It's going to be awesome. All right. So reach out to me if you have any question. Modern Medicine Movement Podcast at gmail.com, at Aloha Surf Doc, Facebook, Thomas Hemingway, or Modern Medicine Movement. Like I said, I'm happy to help 5 of you out there that respond first and want to try some of the nutritional supplements that I personally take because they're freaking awesome. And they've helped me so much, and I'd love to share that with you guys. So until next time, thank you so, so much. I'm grateful for you guys. So pumped to be here. A big aloha. So thanks for listening, guys. Appreciate you so much. So grateful for you. If you haven't done it already, please, please, please write a review. Click on the little button on Apple Podcasts, drop me a review, drop me a note, drop me an email, whatever it is. Would love to hear from you. I so appreciate you guys. Feel free to not only subscribe, but share with your friends and family. And let me know if there's any other topics you want to hear about. I love to get your feedback. I just love connecting with you guys. So thank you so much. Appreciate you. Just thinking about you guys and just here to serve. So big aloha.